Welcome back, guys. Today we are in session 6. We're talking about shattered assumptions and dealing with when, what we thought was reality actually wasn't. For me, I was completely and totally blindsided. I had no idea what was happening for my whole marriage. And so I was just completely and totally shocked all the way. It took a long time for me to kind of come out of that shock and start to process what was going on. One thing I noticed myself doing is I would avoid people. I wasn't sure who knew, how many people knew. And so in general, I just wanted to avoid everybody. And the times where I couldn't avoid people and I'd have to go to the barbecue. I remember I went to a 4th of July barbecue and a lot of people there knew what was going on, live in a small town, rumors, whatever. You just assume everybody knows, even if nobody does, because I'm not the center of the universe, right? But I felt like I was. And so what I would do if I had to be around people is I caught myself trying to be perfect, which was interesting to me because I have never cared about being perfect ever in any way ever before this. I mean, I'm the chick that would show up and literally, I actually did this a couple days ago. I will wear pajama pants, red rain boots, bright yellow college sweatshirt, and haven't brushed my hair or teeth all day. It's cool. I do that all the time. But in this time of life, I was nutso. And I felt like all of this shame that I was wearing, I could fix with perfection. And that sounds nuts, but that's what I did. And so if I went somewhere, I would be in the bathroom for 5 hours getting ready, like it was the junior prom. And I would look and act and seem flawless. And I just needed everybody to know, I'm not this dumb idiot. Because I think that's what happens. You live with this person and you love this person and you're always with them. You think you know them. And then you find out all of this was a lie. And I would never say, oh, I'm a dumb woman. I don't think that at all. But I felt like that because how can you live with somebody and they have a second life and you have no idea? How does that happen? And so for me, I felt so stupid and so foolish and the world's biggest idiot. And I needed to prove to everybody that I had it all together and that I was smart, I was perfect, and I was going to get through this. Or maybe that it didn't even affect me. To certain people, to my inner circle, my support group, they knew the deal. But anybody else was like, no, they can't come into this. And so that was my way of dealing with that. And I don't know how long I did that. Maybe a year, maybe longer, probably longer. But it sucked. It was suffocating. It was a nightmare. And so we're going to talk about this. You have this new reality now. And how do you deal with that? So Mello's going to jump in on this and talk about facing this new reality that you have, no matter what you decide to do with your partner, move forward or not move forward. How do you face this?
Well, first, I think that you have to recognize, and we've talked about this in other sessions, that grief is a huge factor in this. And the thing about grief, when we automatically think about grief, we think about someone dying. And the truth of it is the marriage as you've known it has died. And when you recognize those shattered assumptions, the belief that it was one way and it wasn't, the thing that you thought it was a diamond, it was a cubic zirconia, maybe not even a cubic zirconia, a diamond X or whatever the stone is, or you think that you have a Louis Vuitton and you have a really good knockoff from China, or, designer handbag, however that's relative to you. And the truth of it is that you have no control over what this other person did. You're believing that your life is one way and it's not. And so along with the betrayal and all of the emotions and getting in touch with that, you're being viewed by your family and friends. And so what will happen is there's shame, there's embarrassment, there's the inability to know who is who in this story that you once called your life. And now it's like the nightmare. It's like, Freddy Krueger meeting all those, the scariest monsters in the world. And this has become your life. This is your reality. And so when you first begin to assess, assimilate all of this going on in your mind, it's very difficult because you don't have a chance to get footing. So you constantly feel like you're falling every single moment of every single day. And you uncover more and more lies and betrayals. And what will happen is you start to doubt everything, everyone, your complete surrounding around you. And I think that once you recognize that the betrayal that exists in the marriage, you've got to grieve the relationship as it was. Now, I'm not saying what it's going to be in the future, but at this very moment, you have to grieve what you believe to be the truth. And it was all a facade. It was all, smoke and mirrors. And so when you recognize that and you go in to grieve that, in death, there's closure. There's a finality about death in comparison to a relationship that either you're going to make the relationship work, you're going to divorce the person, and you guys have children together and you still have to deal with this person. So there's not that finality of it. But here's where you can gain closure. And that's to assess that that you've been betrayed. And that is to, again, I would really encourage you to get a notebook or a journal. And I know we've mentioned that along the way, but you really need to write down what you believe to be true versus what the reality is. And that, I always call it an autopsy of the relationship as it was. And when you take an autopsy and you do it from a very systematic way, you make a list. This is what I thought it was. This is what it is. And when you make a list and you see it in writing, it's very, very mind shifting, changing, because you're able to assess what's true and what's not. And that is the best way, in my opinion, that you can deal with shattered assumptions and believing what was versus what is. And I think that once you start to assess the truth from the lies and the betrayal, you'll realize that it's about your truth in it. And you cannot change somebody else's behavior no matter what you did or do in the past or from this moment forward. But what you can shift and change is your perspective in it. And that's a lot with these shattered assumptions, with the belief that we took these vows and this is the way that I believed it to be. And a very wise woman, it was my mother that told me this. She used to say to me, even though it may not be a diamond and it's only a cubic zirconia, it can still have as much value. And so where you may think that you are only a cubic zirconia, or you may feel like I am not worthy of, I am not worth it. I was lied to, I was bamboozled. Everyone around me has lied to me. Again, I want you to grieve that. And then I want you to receive that you are still a diamond. You are still worth truth and love. And so it really comes to these shattered assumptions where you recognize you don't have any control over other people's behaviors, but you do have control over yours, and really just processing that and allowing yourself to grieve that, because it is a death of the harshest kind. And that is to be in the room with the person that you loved and trusted the most, and they have betrayed you. And so again, do not let anyone tell you how to grieve or how to feel. It's grief, and it's yours.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I remember when I was going through this, I would become slightly obsessed with trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't real. And when I was in the hospital with the baby, what was going on at home? Like, I was like crazy obsessed with it. And so I guess Something I'd like to talk about, Mello, is, you know, does that matter? Like, that's a path that I think most of us are going to go on. And so as our mind starts to go there and we start to question, and we're going to talk about this more in our next session, with kind of getting obsessive in our thinking. But with this, I mean, it's really like, I guess the question I want to know is, does it matter? Like our quest to figure out, like, oh, my whole life, like this has been going on for this long. And a lot of people in our situation here watching, they don't know how long it's been going on. Like they don't get all the answers. So they might have been told or found out that stuff was going on for like a month and then it was a year, or, you know, so there's a lot of people who, even when they start to find out truth, they don't get all of it. And so there's a huge window open for questions there. Questions that can really torture and torment us. I mean, I did it to myself. So I guess let's talk about that. Like, does it matter that we do or do not know everything?
You know, that's a very powerful question, Melissa. I personally went through a very torturous affair, and our daughter died. And about 2 weeks later, after her death, we had a memorial service. And the Saturday after the memorial service on Friday, my ex-husband was with his girlfriend or mistress, whichever you prefer to call her, and he went to his family's house. And there's about 7 or 8 siblings there with their families. And so all of my nephews, my nieces, people that I was actually leaning on them because of the death of my daughter. And it was only me and my mom. I come from a very small family, and my dad had already passed away. So when I looked at that, I sat him down and I was like, just tell me the truth. Just tell me everything. And so he would tell me something, and I listen, and I'm paying attention to you, and I'm watching your movement, and I'm a therapist, right? And so I was like, taking notes, and okay, what happened at 6:45, and what happened at 7:43, and then after a while, what I found is that information only further damaged me. And it's very easy for me to say because I thought that I had gotten all of the information. And then as I found out later, and I still continue to find out things, if I'm being very honest and candid, what I had to do at that point was disconnect myself. And when I say an autopsy of the relationship as it was, an autopsy is taken by an unbiased human that will just assimilate the situation and diagnose and try to find out what the cause of death was, right? For me, an autopsy was just trying to understand what I had believed to be true, and I had to assume that none of it was true. And as difficult as that is, I had to assume that none of it was true, because when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. When someone shows you betrayal and hurts you to the depths that I was hurt, or that you're being hurt, listen, he was having an affair while our child was dying inside of the hospital. What else did I need to assume? And that's not to say, understand, like, I'm not calling him names. I'm not saying he's right or wrong. What I'm saying is I had to assess, and I had to take what appeared the truth really was. So what I had really believed the truth to be was that we were like in this great relationship, and we were going to come across. I mean, I wanted to get a book deal. I thought I was going to we're going to write our love story, life after death of our daughter, our beautiful daughter. And what I really found is that it is a beautiful love story. It is a beautiful love story because he still loves her. That's his child. I still love her. She's my child. It's just that there was a lot of lies and betrayal in that. And so when I had to assume that none of it was true, and I had to make sense of it to what I knew, the 6:45 and the 7:43 details no longer mattered. And so no matter what you find out to be true, you have to assume when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. So if it's been shown to you, does it matter? I think that it's human nature, because understand, I literally wrote a list. I wanted to know minute by minute on the dates he was with her. I went through the phone bills. I mean, I became extremely obsessive, and I know we're going to talk more about that later on today or in the sessions next week. But at the end of it, I had to assume he showed me who he was. And so I'm not saying that you are going to stay with this person or not stay with this person. What I'm saying is, if they've shown you who they are, you have to believe it. That's what actions speak louder than words, or what it appears to be. And when you start to take that autopsy, it's not to sit there and dissect the other person. It's to dissect what is really is versus what we thought it was. I thought I had a loving relationship with my ex-husband's family. I thought that they loved me, but they showed me who they were. So not only was the betrayal from my ex-husband, but it was also from my family, my daughter's family. And so when I was able to assess that and even acknowledge it and recognize truth, because the truth is the truth. It's not a perception of the truth. When someone is betraying you and having an affair, that is what the truth is. And it's painful, and I'm so sorry to be the one to say this to you, but when someone shows you who they are, you must believe them. And so, do details matter? I think in the beginning they do, but I think as you go on in your process, your way, healthy way, you'll recognize that the details don't matter. Betrayal, whether it's once, twice, 3 times, or 500 times, betrayal and lies are betrayal and lies. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself insane trying to assess, oh my gosh, did this person know? Because 99.9% of the time, people are just trying to function in their lives, and they're not so centered on me or you. Whereas we feel like there's this huge magnifying glass, everybody's looking pore by pore. But the reality of it is that this is your journey. You've got to find out what will soothe your heart, what will help you deal with all of the grief that you're feeling as you're grieving the relationship the way it was. So again, you may say, well, I want detail by detail. I don't think that you're going to get detail by detail. If you got detail by detail, we probably all wouldn't be sitting here, right? So you must assess to understand when someone shows you who they are, you've got to believe them. But that's my husband, that's my wife. I know. But you've got to believe someone when they show you who they are. And I'll say that over and over again to you. And as difficult as that may be, and we say that we have no idea, but for me personally, I do have an internal gut feeling, intuition, whatever you want to call it. And there was always something inside of me that had doubt, if I'm really being honest with you today. And I've never, if my therapist would watch this, my own therapist would probably go, girl, what are they doing to you? What's that Julia Christina doing to you? What's Melissa doing to you? But I think that the truth of it is that I always had a little feeling something was off. Now, nothing is to the magnitude that it ended up being. I don't think we expected my daughter to die. I don't think that, I don't think it was something with malicious intent, but the results were malicious because it was my heart that was shattered. So again, I think that if I could go back, I don't think I'd want to know any one detail of it. As far as you go, how does it matter? As a therapist, I'm going to say to you, when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. And that should be enough. With vows, it's still enough.
Yeah, I think when you say that, when someone shows you who you are, what I think about is when their actions show you who they are. A lot of us are going to get a lot of lip service to try to manipulate and change the narrative. And so when someone shows you who they are by their choices, that's what you get. That's what it is. And it can be so confusing, especially when you have a family with somebody, and especially if you really love them. You see what they've chosen to do. This is a choice. This is, to me, it's a lack of character, honestly. That seems harsh, but like, I can be unhappy all day long, but not make that choice. And I can, you know, be as unhappy as possible, and I can still have boundaries up in my marriage to guard myself against making these choices. And so when you see that somebody has let go of that and made this choice, there you go. Like, that's why I said before, like, chain yourself to a fence pole and don't listen to their words and only look at their actions. Because if somebody has chosen to choose poorly, and now they're trying to like mess with your brain and play games with you with their words, I don't want to hear your words. I just want to see what you're going to do next. Is that person going to be the one to schedule the marriage counseling session? Or are you going to do it? Are you going to buy the books and highlight all the words for them? And they may or may not read it. Like, to me, that's what a lot of us do. And that's not them doing anything. That's playing games with their words. And so I want only to look at somebody's words or actions, not words, just like Milo's saying. And that's it. Like, and it's so stinking hard, especially when your heart's actually involved and you really love that person. And so kind of shifting gears a little bit into more about what we're talking about when, the bomb explodes and you're like, holy crap, this is my life. What's happened? What's real? What's not? Do I care? And then I really think that in this place, this is where shame is introduced. And shame, we could probably talk to you about shame for probably a year straight, just talk about shame. And so we're going to talk about it right now. And I feel like the opposite of shame to me is being vulnerable. Maybe that's not it, but I'm not the therapist. So we'll let Julia talk about that as far as, what is vulnerability? And then why should we be vulnerable? So Julia, take it away.
I mean, and that's it. It's the epitome of vulnerability when we're standing there wide open and we're at the whim of what other people could do to us. And I sometimes use a bit of the analogy that like vulnerability is full frontal nudity. Like it is standing there exposed. And it's saying like, what are you going to say about me? What are you going to do to me? My shields are down. My guards are down. And I am leaving myself open. But I have to trust that I am going to be able to handle. First of all, I'm going to figure out if I'm going to trust myself, right? So I'm going to trust myself that I'm going to be able to handle what comes my way. That I'm going to be able to handle any judgment or criticism or gossiping behind my back or people thinking things. And exactly what you said, Melissa, about those behaviors of wanting to appear perfect. That was to avoid that feeling of vulnerability of what are people going to think about me? What are people's opinions going to be about me? And you can't control that. And whenever we do sort of, pardon me, like perfectionism thrives off of a lack of control or a perception of a lack of control, because we could even talk about, we're not going to go into there, but how control in and of itself is just an illusion that we never have full control over anything or at all. But it's that feeling of being out of control. And so you'll notice that the more vulnerable and out of control you feel on the inside, like I can't control what I'm feeling on the inside, the more I'm going to try and control things on the outside. So I'm going to tell you that when my life is feeling in chaos, my house is spotless because that's what I can control. And I'm trying to cling to something. I'm trying to find some solid ground, somewhere to stand on, because everything that I knew to be true is not. And now I'm exposed. I'm standing here. I am, full frontal nudity. And all I want to do is just put some clothes on so that you can't hurt me, so that you can't hit me. I want to put the shields up so that you can't get close. I've already been hurt enough. And so when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in safe ways, so this doesn't mean that we share everything with everyone, because that's, that can I'm going to talk about this a little bit because I think this is an important thing to go into. So Brene Brown, I don't think maybe we've mentioned her before, but she's a shame researcher. She talks about shame and vulnerability and courage. And she uses two really powerful analogies that come when we are in shame, or that when we are in struggle, and how two ways that we often handle it that end up making it worse. And she says the first one, she calls it floodlighting. So floodlighting means that we share really personal information. We share our pain with someone who has not earned the right to hear it, with someone who we don't have that close, safe, trusted relationship with. And I imagine that's what happens. That's what happens when we are in pain. Sometimes we all our sort of rational, logical thinking goes out the window. And we're like, I just want to share this with anyone who will listen. Like, oh my gosh, you said hi to me and you smiled at me. Now I feel like I'm going to tell you everything that's going on with me. I'm going to tell you all of my pain because there's someone that I can talk to. That's someone that's just like, given me a little bit of a crack of an opening, I'm going to like bust the door wide open. And so what happens and why this is harmful, and you've probably experienced this in your pain and in your shame, is that you'll tell someone something. And then what happens is we are floodlighting and we are sticking on the floodlights. We are shining bright in their faces. They may not know us that well. We may not have this close relationship. And what's the first thing that you do if someone was to come to you right now and shine these like floodlights on you, what's the first thing you would do? You would cower. You would take a step back. You'd be like, whoa, too much. Sorry, didn't sign up for this. Turn around and walk away. And then we're feeling shame. And now we're also feeling rejection. We're also feeling that pain of being like, oh, see, I was right. No one cares about me. No one loves me. I'm not valuable. I'm not worth it. I'm just disposable and can be tossed aside. And so it affirms that story. And so vulnerability doesn't mean that we just lay it all out there. Vulnerability means that we share parts of our story with the people who have earned the right to hear it, but that we do show up, like that we do allow ourselves to be seen. But we are also very cautious and conscious of where we are doing that, because not keeping this stuff all a secret, not pretending like everything is okay. And it makes sense. Like, it makes sense to want to appear like you're perfect if your whole life is falling apart, because you're like, that's one thing that like people can't get at me. It's a shield. People cannot get at me. If I can make it look like I am okay, then no one else can hurt me. No one can judge me. No one can criticize me. No one can feel sorry for me. And so I'm going to do what I can do to prevent that from happening, because I can't handle anymore. And so again, to be understanding with ourselves and compassionate towards ourselves, and to not shame ourselves more for being like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Like, why am I getting all crazy? And why am I spending like 3 hours getting myself ready? To just show ourselves some understanding. And that's where that self-compassion piece comes in, and that mindfulness piece. We're just noticing like, oh, this is what I'm doing right now because this is what I'm feeling right now. And so paying attention and knowing what's going on and being honest with ourselves, and even like Mello said, I mean, this is like the hardest thing, is like about the details. And enough times of calling a friend, calling this person, texting this person, emailing this person, cornering this person like at the grocery store and being like, tell me, like, did you know this? And what about this? Or like contacting our partners and being like, okay, I heard this, like, tell me everything. And then enough times of getting that information, like scratching that itch, and then realizing that it just opens up this bigger wound, like that sick feeling in your stomach that you get afterwards, that like slime, like I just got totally slimed and now I feel even just like worse. I thought I needed to scratch this itch. But enough times of, that's why it's so important that we're connecting with ourselves and checking in with ourselves and noticing what we're thinking and feeling and going through, to be like, okay, enough times of feeling like total garbage, like total crap, like this big, like I've just been covered with the ickiest, stickiest, most awful slime after obsessively scratching that itch, getting that information, finding that stuff out. Enough times of it make me feel worse. I'm going to start listening to myself, and I'm going to stop doing that because it's not actually in my best interest. It's not actually making things better. But the only way we're actually going to know that is if we are connecting with ourselves and if we are tuning in. After I do this, even though I want to, even though everything in me is like going crazy, and I think the only way to relieve myself from this is to get this information or ask these questions and do this inquiry and find everything out. If I check in with myself, and after I've done that a few times, if I'm feeling worse instead of better, it's time to try a different strategy. It's time to do something different, because it's not helping, and it's not making me feel more empowered. It's not making me feel more safe. It's not helping me move forward. It's just yanking me right back. And so talking about vulnerability and what that means, it means that we talk about what we're going through, that we share it with the people that have earned the right to hear it, that we are honest with ourselves, that we are connecting with ourselves, that we are authentic with what it is that we are dealing with. But we're doing it in responsible ways. We're not pretending, but we're also not just like spraying it all out there. We're not doing the spray and pray where we're like, I'm just going to spray it all out there and pray that someone can fix it for me, or someone can make it feel better, or someone can, make this go away. So it's tough. But these little bits of things that we're talking about, and also too, to be able to acknowledge that, oh my gosh, like what if I do scratch that itch? Like, oh my gosh, they told me not to, and now I did it, and now I feel worse, and what's wrong with me, and why can't I even do this right? Again, it's about noticing, like, this is what's going on with me. Like, it's not helpful to judge ourselves or criticize ourselves or condemn ourselves for whatever it is that we're doing. It's not helpful. It serves no purpose other than create more of that shame, other than create more of that self-hatred, other than kind of get us caught up in the spiral, in the I call it the shame beep storm. The shame shit storm. You can beat me out if you need to. But connecting and noticing and paying attention, and then proceeding mindfully, proceeding responsibly. I don't mean responsible as far as society standards, like what I'm expected to do and how I'm supposed to handle this, but responsibly with like what are my needs? If I'm listening to myself, what is good for me in this moment? What's important to me in this moment? What's going to be healing and helpful for me? And that's what I mean by responsible to ourselves, not anybody else, but to ourselves.
Yeah, that's some powerful stuff. I think in dealing with this shame piece and being vulnerable, like especially if you've never done that before, being vulnerable, that's very hard. And so we're not going to put any more on you necessarily for this week, because you have a lot. And all this stuff we're talking about, especially like last week when we talked about being mindful, and this week we're talking about vulnerability, like these are things that aren't going to just better your recovery. This is going to better your whole life. Like, can you imagine, like, I have 3 little girls, and, my struggle is slowing down enough to where I do like one thing at a time. But like, if one of them comes up and wants to tell me a story, but I'm like still on my phone, I'm like cooking here, doing this, like I'm not being mindful. I'm not paying attention. And so these practices, even though, I'm many years away and into my recovery, how cool are these tools that we're going to have, like, as we go through our lives? Like, that's when I say, like, you're never going to be the same again, because you're developing things that you may never have done before. And so this is, we're going to talk in later weeks more about your new life, the new you, like who you are. And part of that new you is these new tools that you're actually going to use and apply and not forget about and not give up on. And I mean, how cool, how much more of a fuller life are we going to have when we're actually doing this? So I hope that encourages you. Again, we don't know where you are right this moment. We don't know your individual story right now. We encourage you to share that on our private Facebook group, and share it with everybody else so we can encourage each other. But man, are we proud of you, and we're proud of this work. We're proud that you're here and that you're going to keep going and keep pushing, because you're going to get to know yourself again, and you're going to have healthy rules in your life and boundaries in your life, and you're going to be so pumped that you made these choices for yourself despite the crap and the curveballs that life threw at you. So I'm going to sign off here. We'll see you next week. Oh, wait a minute. What do we have for our homework? I don't remember. Mello remembers.
So what I would like you to do is to go ahead and again take that nifty notebook or journal that you have, and I want you to write what was, what is, what will be. And I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about for you to write down what was, what is, and what will be. That's your homework.
That's a big, heavy project. So we'll have some more instructions on that in this email, so you can kind of dive into that too. And again, be answering those same questions that we have every week. Journal, get it all out there, because one day you will not remember this as well as you do right now. And so it'll be cool for you to see all that you went through and just how strong that you are. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.